Hi, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 5 of SteamLUG Cast. We're recording this on the 4th of March 2016. My name is Cheese, and with me I have Hero.
Hello.
And Dorita.
Hello.
And special guest Ariel Manzur from the Godot Engine.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us. Before we dive in, we're going to have a quick recap of what everyone's been playing lately. Hero, what have you been up to?
I've been playing some Tabletop Simulator, somewhat begrudgingly, as well as the new beta port that we'll be talking about later, Speedrunners, and some of the classic Descent using the Rebirth engine, which is a source port.
Nice.
How about you, Dorita? What have you been playing?
I have not been playing this much on my computer, but I've been playing Oh Hi and Oh No on my Ubuntu phone like an addict. It's two pretty, on the nose of it, pretty simple puzzle games, which are just awesome. You can play these online as well, but be advised it will kill all your time. And some more Insurgency. What about you, Cheese?
I have been playing a lot of Firewatch lately. Been getting into Sub-Level 0. Been playing some of the new XCOM and a tiny bit of Super XCOM, and I've been playing Descent with Hero and Namoda, which has been a lot of fun. Ariel, have you had any time for playing games?
Yeah, I remember a time where I had time to play games very fondly. I guess, StarCraft 2 when it came out, the last thing, I started playing it and then I stopped, and that's it.
Well, hopefully you'll have time for playing something soon.
Yeah, now that it's the game is out, it clears my schedule a bit.
So before we dive into the main show content, we're going to have a bit of a chat about Ariel and his history. Do you want to give us a bit of a bit of your own background, how you got into programming and how you came to work on the Godot engine?
So I guess I got into programming when I was very young. I had some, I think I was 12, and I had some teachers, private teachers. They taught me programming, and, Pascal was very popular back then. And then, went on to, we were making games back then. And then, the internet happened, and we had a bit of a detour into that. But then we went back to making games. But yeah, long time ago started.
And how did you come to be working at Occam Studio and working on Dog Mendoza?
I guess we were... So around 2001 or something, we started making engines in general, and we were doing a bunch of projects. And eventually, we were in 2007, we were making this game called Atmosphere with a previous engine. And we, at that point, 2007 is when the iPhone came out, the first iPhone, and also the PS3 was out recently. And so we noticed that there was a change in the hardware, right? That was happening. You had these low-end devices that were starting to be viable as a general purpose computer. And you had these high-end devices with multiple cores and weird memory configurations. And so we decided at that point to basically throw away the engine architecture of the previous engine and start Godot, basically. Occam happened I guess 5 years later, maybe. No, a bit more. 5 or 6 years later, which was basically the way we... So while we were making the engine, we were trying to also make games. And we were working consulting with companies that were making games, but we were making our own games. And so Occam happened as an attempt to do that, basically. Partner with people who were good at selling and, production, that sort of thing, and make games.
Nice. I wasn't actually aware that the engine sort of existed a little bit before Occam did. That's cool to know.
Yeah, 2008, it was about 6 years. Yeah, it was going to be open source from the start, but, it was, we basically wanted to release when it was ready, and that became a sort of a long process. It's, it's very, very big piece of software, so that happens. But yeah, we started making games by making engines, partly because, we are engine people, partly because back in 2000, there was the idea of using an engine wasn't really that big as it is right now. So you had to make your engine, basically.
Right. So for many of us Linux users, the first time that we would have heard of you guys would have been when the Interactive Adventures of Dog Mendoza and Pizza Boy Kickstarter campaign launched. How did you guys go about deciding to do that Kickstarter campaign, and how did you find that?
Occam started as basically the first project of Occam was a demo for that game. That was like 2 or 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years before the Kickstarter campaign. And I guess the Kickstarter campaign was like a last resort because we were, we had this demo and we were like shopping around, talking to publishers, stuff like that. And it wasn't working. We couldn't sell it. We actually met Tim Schafer and we showed it to him, and he was like, yeah, you should put it on Kickstarter. Obviously for him it was very easy. But for us, we didn't have that feeling that, we put this on Kickstarter and it will happen for sure. And, we didn't have that until the very last second of the campaign. And so for a long time we were trying to sell it the sort of classic way of showing it to publishers and stuff like that, see if anyone could fund it.
And what kind of response did you get to the project? Obviously nothing favorable.
Yeah, from publishers, stuff like that. It was, we couldn't sell it. Everyone liked it, but it's not like it's that thing with graphic adventures where it's like the market. It's not. I don't know. They don't like it or whatever. The irony is that as soon as the Kickstarter happened, Deep Silver they wanted to sign it, and they're saying like, this is great for mobile because it's an episodic graphic adventure, which means it's great as a premium thing. They can sell it. It doesn't have to be free to play and all that sort of thing. But the Kickstarter had to happen in order to become like a viable project for a classic traditional publisher, I guess.
It's been really interesting to see that kind of shift. It does seem like crowdfunding campaigns allow or can be used or have been used by some developers to demonstrate that there's interest in a project, which in turn can get a publisher's attention.
Yeah, and for us, also the opposite was true in the sense that the demo was very important in getting the Kickstarter funded. So we had to spend money on it, and we had to do this big effort to have a demo and then to go for the self-funded route. I don't know. I don't really know like what the publishers saw on it. I don't know if they are looking at the Kickstarter numbers and saying, this is gonna sell because of these numbers. Maybe, I don't know. Honestly, they're not like super impressive numbers. We have like 1,000 backers and we barely made it. And we love every single one of them. And if you finish the game, you're gonna see, or if you finish the game, but if you go to the credits screen from the main menu, you're gonna see the name of every single backer there. It's the longest credits ever. But you can't go to someone and say, look at this, we sold to 1,000 people, that means it's a good business. It's like, it's not a lot of people. So I don't know what numbers they saw, but they came to the conclusion that it would be a good business for them. So that's cool.
I think it translates into a bit of press coverage as well. Like it's a little bit more visibility and a little bit more prominence. I think it all kind of goes together and helps. Hope that the game manages to find its footing and find an audience now that it's released on Steam.
Yeah, definitely. Press coverage and like visibility is also, it's usually to us, it's something that happens like by surprise. For example, when we released the engine on Steam, it was like, I was super surprised by all the people who noticed the Steam release more than the normal release, the website release. And they were congratulating us like, oh, now that you're on Steam, you made it. The truth is that I had that Steam, like the app ID, I had it for like a year before, but I never had time to like set it up. And to us, it was a way of like saving bandwidth because we were, even though our package is, our download size is like super small, we were having problems with bandwidth. Every time we release, it's like it goes up to like a couple terabytes of downloads, and so
Wow.
Steam was like a way of like saving in bandwidth, but it ended up being like people, I don't know, it gives you this credibility that I guess it makes sense, but yeah, it totally caught us by surprise.
Yeah, fair enough. You said that the demo, or that you had a demo around for a couple of years. What kind of work did you have to do to it, to get it ready in time for the Kickstarter campaign?
Actually, the demo was so the demo came out like 3 days before the campaign was over. Something like that. I had to like convince everyone at Occam to release it, and I guess the way the one of the reasons I convinced them is that they've given up on the campaign. It didn't look like we were gonna make it. I was looking at like projections and stuff like that, and I was thinking, we need like 100 people that we don't have. So the demo was. I don't think I had to do anything to it to put it on Steam. The demo was actually pretty good. It was a great like vertical slice of the game. And actually to this point, the code from the demo is pretty much the same code that is in the final game, because it was necessary to implement almost everything on that demo that we used in the final game.
Yeah, it must have been a sort of helpful tool in sort of shaping the way that you would end up using the engine for the full game.
Yeah, it was great. It was one of my favorite, like, I guess it's the project that I'm most proud of, in a sense that it let the team do their thing. Like everyone, like this is probably a kind of a shocking news, but I haven't played the game. The final game, I haven't played it, because the tools to create the game were so like effective in letting the team integrate their content, that the engine for the game was almost like a third party engine. They would send me bugs, they would send me like test cases, stuff like that. But I didn't need to play the game in order to like be the programmer for the game. I wrote most of the code for the game, and that to me that's a big achievement. When you are running a commercial studio, you need a way to like keep the programmers out of the way of everyone else, because the programmers, they're going to be bottlenecks, they're going to be source of bugs, and they're expensive.
Yeah, that's really cool. Every time that I've heard about somebody releasing a demo for their game, they usually describe it as a large process. They have to go through a lot of changes in order to finish it and make it something you can present to someone. But in this case, most of the stuff was transferable to the finished game anyway. That's a testament to the technology.
Yeah. We really wanted a really good, well-polished demo, and so that was good. Also, it was good that this genre of games, it's very very well defined, and so everyone knew what we needed from the tools, from the engine. And I guess for the final game they wanted to add mini games and stuff like that, and at some point they were talking about like the more modern features like time dialogues, stuff like that. I think we actually have that feature there, but I don't know if we ever used it.
Yes, there is.
Oh, we used it? Okay.
Did you say timed dialogue?
Yeah, like you have 5 seconds to pick an option, and then it goes to a default option, something like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, that is not.
Okay, well that's possible with the tools, but I guess they didn't use it. But yeah, so because it's such a well-defined genre, it was like we can implement this. There's that story that I told a million times where Tim Schafer was visiting our studio, and I showed him like the tools. I showed him like this. We use this sort of script language that it's like a higher level, even higher level than Shitty script. It's like it's not even Turing complete. It's like to write dialogue and stuff like that. And I showed it to him, and he looked at it and said, "Oh, that looks just like Scum. We used to write like Guy Rush speak, and the line was, 'What do you mean?' something like that." And he, I was surprised because I've never seen Scum, but we apparently managed to create a tool that looks like it, because it was sort of, made to behave the same way.
Nice. So how did you come about to be working with the Dog Mendoza license? Did you have any contact with Dark Horse or with the graphic novel's original creators?
Yeah, so one of the partners at Occam is one of the guys who draws the comic. So the writer of the comic is from Portugal, and the guys who draw it are from here, from Argentina. It's 2 guys. One of them is he was the art director originally at the studio, then he became partner, and so that was basically they were him and a couple of the guys who became partners at Occam. They were shopping around to like make a game with their little comic IP. And they were meeting with studios, and all the studios were recommending like some sort of mobile game where you kill aliens or something, tap the screen, something like that. And so when we saw that, we said, no, this is great for like a classic graphic adventure that we've no idea who to sell it to, but this would be great, you know. Back then, obviously, mobile, just like today, it's like the market where you sell. And so that's how we came to work with.
So, for any of our listeners who might be unfamiliar with the game, could you give a short description of the interactive adventures of Dog Mendoza and Pizza Boy?
Yeah, so it's the story is Dog Mendoza is like a detective who is a werewolf in the city of Lisbon in Portugal. It's the capital of Portugal, and he is like the detective of the occult. Something like that. It's like he takes care of the cases in the sort of underworld of Lisbon, where there's like vampires and demons and all the stuff. And so it's a very sort of film noir kind of style of detective. And Pizza Boy, it's a guy who runs into a situation where, you know, there's involvement from the demons and stuff, and he ends up working with him. And so he becomes sort of like the vehicle through which you introduce the reader to this world, right? This world of zombies and monsters and stuff like that. And so the game is basically they're at the agency, and they get a new case. It's like a mystery. Some demons are dying. There's a woman, the classic detective stuff, and you get into it.
So is it an original story, or is it an adaptation of one of the comics?
It's an original story. I think it may be supposed to be in between two of the comics, something like that. Maybe volume 2 and volume 3. I'm not sure. Because obviously in the game, they're already working together. If you read the first comic, that's where they sort of meet each other, and Pizza Boy starts working with Dog. So this is definitely an original story, and I think it has a place in the timeline in like the canon of the comic.
Yeah, I backed at the $100 level myself, and I have a copy of the comics sitting on my desk, waiting for me to have time to read them. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, cool! Thank you.
Yeah, going back to the Kickstarter, I was very excited when I saw that you were having that, because I was a fan of the Godot Engine. I'd been messing around with it previously, so this was a way to show my support.
Yeah, definitely the Godot Engine community helped a lot. The Kickstarter was kind of a weird thing, or I think it's unusual from what I've seen. I've been to, like, I guess in GDC, stuff like that, people talk about their campaigns. We seem to have, we made it like barely, with like a couple $100 to spare, and it seems like every single thing we did during the whole campaign, it's like it contributed. And if we had taken it away, we would have lost. So like it's like the Godot Engine community helped, you guys helped. I remember you mentioned it. Thank you for that too. All the Twitter traffic helped, all the social media stuff, all the Steam demo, even though it was like 3 days before, that helped. It's like every single thing was like crucial for us, I guess.
You can see that the last 3 days of the campaign were certainly the biggest.
Yeah, and that's something, having said that every single thing helped, I would say that, I wouldn't take away any of that, but what I would have done is I would have put the demo earlier up, because Steam actually, like, this is in their documentation, they guarantee a number of views for you when you publish. So you're going to get traffic from the Steam store. And this is traffic that is looking for a game, right? Like if you find the link to a Kickstarter on Twitter, like by accident, you may not be looking for a game at that point. But if you find a demo on Steam, you're looking for a game. So you're gonna go and you're more likely to fund it because it's a game. It's what you're looking for. And so yeah, that's an advice I would give is if you have the opportunity to put a demo up, especially on Steam, like put it on Steam. Yeah.
Speaking of support, the Godot Engine is now under the Software Freedom Conservancy.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, I guess Juan wanted to. There was some talk about how to fund Godot in a more sort of independent way, and usually a foundation is what happens. When you look at projects, what they do, and a foundation is very complicated thing to manage. It's sort of like a company, but with like a lot more strict rules and paperwork and stuff like that. So, and Juan was very he wanted like a lot of transparency, that sort of thing, to make sure people know what happens with the donations and all that. And so we looked around, and Conservancy, they seem to be pretty. The projects that they partner with are very important. They have Git and Wine and a bunch of others, and so that's pretty cool. And they took us in.
Are you planning to add some other conservancy-like institutions to that list for people in other territories? Because the Software Freedom Conservancy is a registered nonprofit in the US. They get to have tax-deductible donations, but pretty much nobody else can do that.
Oh, so like, do you mean like us partnering with other similar institutions, but for Europe, for example?
Yes, exactly.
I'm not aware that those exist, but I'm gonna research that. Also, I'm gonna see if we can do that given like our agreement with Conservancy. But that'd be great because yeah, we have our user base. It's like the top country is the US, but the top sort of region is Europe, and so yeah, we have a lot of users from Europe. Yeah, I'm gonna research that.
So at what point during Godot's history did you start allowing community contributions?
In terms of code, we actually had pull requests from the first couple of days. But the thing about that is, this type of project is that it was very mature when we released it. It had like 6 or 7 years of development, and so it's very big and very you have to get used to how it works. Most of the first contributions that we got were not, sometimes they were good ideas, like someone would fix a bug that would in a way that it was a good it's a good fix or good catch, but it wasn't the implementation that we would have liked, just because we were familiar with all this code for 7 years and people had seen it for 2 days. We were open to contributions as soon as we put it on Git, but it had to happen, that time had to pass in order for people to, get used to and get familiar with the, our style, our structure, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a hurdle that every project kind of has to face as people who are interested in contributing get used to how the project runs and the style of approaches towards solving problems that you have.
Yeah. Also the sort of the philosophy of what you want to achieve with an engine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think a good example of that I've seen within the community is a lot of people suggesting to use middleware when, for the most part, the engine is
standalone
dependent. It doesn't have anything external. And so usually when there's a new feature, it's implemented entirely within the engine. And a lot of people, when they first see it, think, well, why don't you just add this library?
Yeah, that's a great example. We want people to like download the code and be able to compile almost right away. And having the dependencies, it's like I freak out when we need to like add a DLL for something on Windows, stuff like that. I hate that. And yeah, it's because we build for so many platforms, it's like impossible to say to someone, okay, you need to get all these dependencies for all these platforms if you want to build everything. So yeah, it's and also it's a problem when we want to add certain features. For example, if I want to make a Steamworks module, it's like, am I allowed to distribute Steam, the Steam library? So most likely it has to be a third-party module that I have to say to people, okay, you need to get Steam for all these platforms, put it here, and then compile. And that's a bit annoying compared to the rest of the engine, which has so many features, and you can just compile it almost, download and compile.
You mentioned previously the SCUM-like dialogue system that you showed to Tim Schafer. As far as I know, these tools are not actually in the engine. Are you planning to also add these, open source these tools?
Yeah, probably sometime after GDC, I want to make a release. It's something that, it might take a while to sort of package into something that is separate from the game, the Doug Mendoza game. Also, it will take a while to what I plan to do is release it and then do a bunch of videos maybe where I explain, how to use it, what it does, what it doesn't do. I get messages from people saying, this tool, I'm an artist and I want to make my graphic adventure game, and so can I use this tool? And I have to say to them, you're going to need a programmer. Even though, as I said, I was the programmer, and I was actually, for half of the development, I was in Germany. And I was spending like 2 hours a week working on like the bugs that I was getting from the team. But still, like, to put together a full game, you have to write code. But you have to write at this pace, like 2 hours a week of code, something like that. And so that sort of thing where it's like, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, and this is, how to use this tool with your team. It's very important to describe the workflow for a team. And the objective of the tool is to have, a very efficient team working on a commercial game, or on a game that you are going to be able to distribute and sell or stuff like that. So yeah, it's like, I'm going to do the release, I'm going to do a few videos, maybe write them up, probably sometime after GDC.
I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
So the engine had its 2.0 release very recently. Was that last week?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe 10 days ago.
What do you think are the most interesting features that have been added, or interesting aspects of this release?
I don't remember what is in this version and what is in the previous one. I think I really like the 2D lighting, all that stuff, the 2D shaders, that sort of thing. I'm not a big sort of interface person personally, but because the release was very big on improving the interface of the editor, and so personally I'm like, I don't see, like, when someone would show me a new theme for the editor, I'd be like, I actually don't see the difference. Like, I just open the editor and do what I need and I close it. But even I can tell that it improved a lot. And I like I also like a lot of things that we did specifically for Doug Mendoza and a couple of other games that we were doing at Occam. It's like the test of shipping a game is great for an engine, because that's where you're going to put the features that you really need to ship a game, right?
Right.
The editor can be as pretty as you like, but if it doesn't have a certain like key features that you need to put the game on Steam and have it work, then it's not of much use. But this was one of the objectives of the engine from the beginning, obviously. But it happened that it coincided with a couple of releases, so that's cool.
Yeah, we had mentioned the Godot 2.0 release in previous casts for both the full release and the beta, but what we didn't bring up was just before that, there was the new website that was set up.
Yeah.
So, was there anything about that you wanted to mention?
I love it. Yeah, it's fast. And the thing about website is I think we're missing a way to like actually communicate with our community of users. Like when something happens, we want to say to everyone, because I see the analytics on the website, and we have like, I don't know, this 50,000 users or whatever every month, whatever number. And so sometimes, for example, when we were doing the Kickstarter, I was thinking like, how do I tell every single one of those 50,000 people that there's this Kickstarter? And the website, it wasn't working back then. And then the open project website.
No.
Yeah. Well, that actually at that point we had the previous website, which was WordPress that kept getting hacked and kept going down. But then open project, it had good features, I think, but yeah, it wasn't. It was slow. There was some bug in like the Ruby code that would put it into like an infinite loop. And if you looked at the source of the page, they had this huge like HTML tag that was generated from this infinite loop. I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, the new website is great. I honestly like to sort of push services to a third-party provider that their job is to maintain it. For example, all the documentation is in a website that is dedicated to hosting documentation. And so that's great because they know how to manage a wiki better than us. We sort of, as I said at the beginning, we had this little detour into web development back when it was like the bubble, and we sort of got like burned by it. We hate it, and so we hate anything to do with like web development. So it's great now. We did it with help from a lot of people. Some of them are in the channel. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the website. You really saved us because we hate it.
Yeah. The new documentation is really nice. It makes it a lot easier to contribute now that it's going through GitHub, and so I've been going through it and doing some proofreading and stuff.
Yeah, that was always a problem. I don't know why it's like since the beginning it wasn't as straightforward as we wanted to like work on the wiki, stuff like that, but now it seems to be great. Yeah,
I think this way it's a lot easier to contribute to the documentation, and that makes me happy because I always wanted to help with that, but before it was a little more difficult. And the new website I think is great as well.
Yeah,
it's a big improvement. So there's a question in chat here which mentions that there's the new text-based scene format which works with version control systems, and they're asking whether or not the shader resources are still in a binary format. Is that something you can answer?
I don't know specifically, but I assume that the text format also works for resources. So, and yeah, definitely, yeah, because when you save a scene, you're saving a bunch of nodes, but you're actually saving a resource called a packed scene. So it's a resource, same as the shader resource. So any resource will save to this format. That should work. I don't know specifically like what issue would be, like what use case is this, but yeah, it should.
Yeah, as far as I know, basically any format can be saved as T-res instead of like the default shader, and in that case it would be the text format.
Yeah, I did the project that I did with the engine with the Git version, which I think had that feature in it, and everything was running happily with Git for me. But I didn't do any stuff with shaders, so I couldn't answer that one off the top of my head.
Did you have the situation where you had to merge one of these files, like a scene or a resource or something?
We did find that like the ordering of resources within the scene file itself would change, and so we had merge conflicts every now and again with that, which is pretty irritating.
Yeah, that's actually a huge problem for everyone. I've been to like at GDC they have like roundtables of like tech artists and this type of people, and they're all complaining like, how do we merge the binary files, and they're all giving their sort of weird convoluted solutions, and yeah, it's a problem, which is not an excuse. It's not a good excuse to say everyone else has this problem. But but I'm hoping to get feedback from people like does it improve your experience? Especially because everyone is moving to Git nowadays, and Git sucks for binary files. Like we still use SVN for Doc Mendoza, for example, because it's somewhat better. And also that's why we like leaving it up to the file system so much, because on big projects, for example, I think it's the very first game that shipped with the engine. It was a retail PSP game, I think 2011 or 12, and we had like, I don't know, at least 12,000 audio files, for example. It was a lot of audio recorded text, and we have, tens of thousands of assets. And what they did in that for that project is they used the SVN log feature, where you have to log certain files, you have to log them to be able to edit them, and everyone else has to wait for you to release the log and stuff like that. And so sometimes it's good to have, uses the third-party tool that works on the file system, and we work on the file system, and everyone, collaborates there. And it's not necessarily something that we can solve, although it would be nice to solve.
Well, I thankfully for my project there were only 3 of us, and one person was only doing art and not touching code, so it was less of a big deal for us. But I can imagine for a larger scale project it would be you would, like you said, you would have to investigate other ways of enforcing problem that situation wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
In any case, I think the new T-Res and T-Scene formats are far better for
Make
that.
a big difference, yeah.
Yeah, before, if you wanted to do...
Yeah, that's why we switched to Git.
It was either binary or XML based, and that was pretty messy. This is a lot better. Even if there are conflicts, it's more human readable.
Yeah, if only for the fact that you can open it and read it, and like it's very small and you can understand what's going on. That's great. I love that. We used to have that on the sort of original or older XML format, and it made them a little bit bigger. But back then the problem was that you couldn't trust what, I'm talking about like the first 2 or 3 years of the engine. You couldn't trust what the engine was saving because there might have been a bug in the save code. So you had to open the XML file and see what was going on. When that became stable enough, we started to like do this optimization where you index all the strings on the file at the beginning, and that basically made it impossible to read. So yeah, I really like the new format just for the fact that you can open it and read it manually. That's great.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So one thing I was kind of interested in asking was whether or not there were any interesting projects that you'd seen that use the Godot engine.
Yeah, right now from the community, I'm seeing, for example, the ones that got greenlit Steam Quest. There's that the game, I forgot the name. There's like a black and white adventure game that looks great, and we're seeing a bunch of cool demos, even like for like global game jam demos and stuff like that look really good. And yeah, I'm seeing projects all the time. I'm trying to, for example, when I go to these events like GDCs, Gamescom, that sort of thing, I try to like go over everything and see if I can like put together some sort of video or something to show around, show the publishers, show the platform people, Sony, Nintendo, that sort of people, just to let them know that this content is coming from this engine, and every year it's better, and I'm surprised every year. That's great.
And Hero and Derrida, I mean, you guys are present in the Godot community. Is there anything that you guys have seen that you think is particularly interesting?
Sadly, I have not been paying that much attention to projects, but there's certainly something to come out. A game that I did like, it's a bit older, but it was quite a fun action-y platformer that was called Dolphin Island 2. I thought that was really nicely pulled off.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Really hard, but also fun.
I had that game when they published it. I put it on, I was in Germany, I was working in the DALI, their office, and I put it on the PS4 dev kit. and people would walk by and start playing it, and like I think eventually someone finished it and they all loved it. It was great. Yeah, I really liked that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can single one particular project out, but every time that I look at all the games that are being made by the community, I'm impressed by the number of games and oftentimes the quality.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff out there.
It's funny because there's so many things that other people have thought about. Someone told me, like, hey, it'd be cool to make this type of game in this engine. And then I look and somebody's already working on it. Usually open source and available on GitHub, which is also cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see very soon, some sort of big release or commercial release, which I know sounds like, it's very commercial minded, stuff like that. But, that's important always. When you see an engine, the first thing people say is, what games did you make with this engine? Somebody showed me, for example, the Blender game engine a while ago, and that was my question. What games were made with this engine? And to be able to say, there's this game on Steam, there's this game on PlayStation, there's this game, that sort of thing, that's great, because that gives you that sort of credibility that I was talking about. Like when we put it on Steam, people cared more about it than the website version. And honestly, if you are in a studio doing a commercial development, you're not going to get the engine from Steam, right? You're going to get it from the website. You're going to put it on the workstations the way you like it. But Steam, I don't know, it gives it this credibility, and some sort of release, especially from a company that's not Occam, or from a developer that's not Occam, it would give it that kind of credibility. I'm hoping for that, like this year, for example. That'd be great.
Yeah, I know what you mean. For now, it's nice to be able to point to Dog Mendoza now that it's actually released, but it would be cool for there to be other projects which are on Steam and other platforms to be able to point to.
There was talk of doing a showcase of interesting projects. I think I saw that on the Godot Facebook page. Is that moving ahead at all?
I'm not aware of it. I did a short time ago. I did that thread where I asked for like videos, so we can put together a video it was for Steam and also for, I guess, for CC. But yeah, I remember that too. Maybe it was supposed to be a section on the Q&A website right now, but I'm not aware of it. Maybe someone else is though.
Actually, in IRC, we were talking about having a trailer to promote the features in Godot, and I'd volunteered to be an editor for it, so there's now an issue on GitHub. If anyone is interested, you can look there to see the ideas that are being thrown around for how it's going to be set up and what videos are going to be used in it, the script, and so on.
Right, yeah. So that was the video, because on Steam it's like you need one video at least. And right now we have this random video that I found, and so we want to put something good. And yeah, that would be like the conclusion of that problem. I'm also looking for like some shorter videos to like show around on GDC and stuff. I think I'm meeting with Nintendo and Sony. I don't know if Microsoft, they don't answer my emails. But yeah, so that's great to show around people, and so that they're aware of how we advance. Like if they remember me, I meet with them like every 6 months, right? At GDC and then at Gamescom. And if they remember, they would notice progress, and that's great.
Also, I think another aspect that gives the engine more legitimacy is the community that builds up around it in providing tutorials, documentation that is not on the official site. Like, for example, the Games from Scratch tutorial on Godot that has been out for a while. And there's even a Japanese book written about Godot, which is on Amazon in Japan. But it exists, so I hope stuff like that happens in other territories as well.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I think it looked like the print of like a blog or something, like if which is how a lot of books exist nowadays. But yeah, it was I think I tried to order a couple. I don't know what happened, but it would be a great prop also for those meetings, right? I can pull out a book and say, look at this book, and if there are no actual Japanese people in the meeting, it'd be really impressive.
So what kind of response have you seen for the engine on Steam, it released last month,
No, I
if I
think
remember right.
last week, something like that.
Oh, last week.
Oh,
Yeah, that was last month, I'm sure.
okay. So yeah, we've had that sort of response from people who noticed, now it's on Steam. That was great. And also we have a lot of traffic. Like right now we have more traffic on the Steam store page than on the website. I think like it's about 60% more traffic, something like that. That's probably because we're new, and so Steam, when you're new, they put you, on rotation more. Also, we are on a category that is not a lot, we're a software application and not a game, so it's not like we're gonna get pushed down the list as fast as a game. So I don't know what's gonna happen like in a month, but right now it's like we see a lot of traffic there. I look at the sort of community section on the page and I see, some messages, but from there it's like there's more traffic on the other like classic community places. Like there's more traffic on Facebook, there's more traffic on IRC and stuff like that. But so I don't know, like the people who are installing it from Steam, I don't know how they then go and participate from the community, and I don't know if they participate from the community. But definitely they're looking at the page, which is again another reason why it'd be good to have like a good video, right? Because when you go to the store page, the first thing you see is that video.
Yeah, another thing about the Steam store page, right now the reviews are listed as positive, and there's not very many, but that's still a good sign, and the reception is good.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing because, it's not a game. So, for example, it's not finished, or it can be considered as not finished. So I don't know, like a review. But I guess if you look at an engine, you can say I'm going to use it or I'm not going to use it. So yeah, that's great. Like I've seen I think one negative review, but it was like kind of a troll. It was pretty funny, but yeah, overall it's great reaction.
Yeah, I haven't gotten around to writing a review yet. I think I'm gonna write an article on the engine first, and then use that as review content. I think. Have you, Dorito or Hero, thought of anything that you would like to write about the engine that would be appropriate for a Steam review?
I have thought about reviewing it, but I would actually have to get some more into the engine again. The last time I made something, I believe I was still mostly on 1.1. That was a really small game, and so much has happened. I really want to see how these changes play out.
I definitely am planning to write a review, but I'm torn because normally reviews I'll just like, if I care about it enough, I'll write a little thing really quick and that's it. It just adds to the number. But this one doesn't have as many reviews and I really care about it, so I might take the time to write out something that's a little bit longer. It'll take a little more effort, but we'll see.
One more question about Steam. Are you interested or going to offer nightlies through Steam at all if you ever get that set up again?
I've seen the feature that Steam has where you can push to like different branches, which is actually what happened with Dog Mendoza. If anyone saw, like for the first hour, the game published automatically, and all the builds that I have been sending to Steam were on like a testing branch, and the main branch had nothing on it. So the game, yeah.
Whoops.
So for the first hour, it was like, and it was set to publish at like midnight of Germany on the 3rd, and so everyone who had been, working on that configuration of the store, they were all sleeping. It was, somebody at the publisher. So I was like, I had to go in and just publish it. But yeah, I saw that feature, and that it's a matter of basically, do we have the setup to do a daily build, a nightly build, and push it to Steam? Like, it's actually quite complicated. Like, we had a server that was doing that on like an Azure thing that we have for free with a certain amount of credit. And if we run the nightly builds, we ran out of credits after like 10 days or something. And so Hakian is right now setting up using Travis for doing builds, and if that works, that could be a nightly a thing that does nightly builds, I guess. That's great work, by the way. I'm really happy with that because it's a lot of work, and it's something that we need to figure out how to get it done.
So let's talk about a bit of where Godot is going to go to. What a convoluted sentence. Let's start with the scripting language. It seems like it has received a bit of attention towards 2.0, but there needs to happen more for a lot of people, especially if Godot wants to be more effective for 3D development and more demanding games. It's a bit slower than it could be or it should be. So what is planned to improve the scripting engine language, especially in terms of speed?
I really liked the idea of having kind of a subset of static type instructions that you can use. And so if you use that, and if your function, for example, is like the whole thing is static, it can be optimized statically, then it becomes a more optimized function. I really like that idea. Obviously for a more demanding game, what you do usually is you write everything on the script, and then you find your bottlenecks, and you do your benchmarks and your profiling. Then you replace whatever is the bottleneck. You replace it with C++ code. That's it's something that we say like, yeah, sure, you can put C++, but honestly, like if we had a module like a native module, for example, for Doc Mendoza, it would be hell for me to release anything, because it's a lot easier to just grab a binary from the website, from the stable branch, and put it on the packet. But if I had to recompile right now, Doc Mendoza is coming out on like 5 platforms, and I have actually 5 computers here running to be able to compile for everything. And if I have to compile for everything, I go crazy. And so I like the idea of figuring out a way to like having more optimized code that you don't necessarily need to compile. I don't know. There was talk about like that Microsoft C# thing that they released a while ago, maybe making a separate version that has that. And if they have a good, sheet or something like that, that would be a good feature. Personally, if I was making a big game, I would do that. I would use the script, and then I would find the bottlenecks, and I would put C++. And if it's big enough, you're going to have money to put a server that does all the builds or something like that.
Which, if you're trying to find the bottlenecks, Godot makes it pretty easy to do that by using the debugger built in.
Yeah, I would like to see like a better profiler, for example. That's something that we haven't needed too much so far. So profiling like your script, sometimes it usually you get a good idea of what's happening because you profile the C++ code, the core of the engine, and you see calls to a certain part of the renderer or the physics or something like that, and you can tell, okay, this is happening because I'm doing this on the script. But having a better way to profile the actual script, where it would tell you, okay, this function from this node is taking up all this time, that'd be great too, for this sort of situation. Yeah.
Have you also considered approaches like the Python approach, which actually manages to compile Python, even non-statically typed, into C code, and that can be natively compiled?
Not considered, but that's a good idea, but it becomes, again, this thing where you have to compile code, right? It's like this code, you have to compile it offline. It's not, unless you have like a just-in-time compiler in the runtime. And I don't know, like, I think that would become a question of, do I save more time by just writing this specific function in C++? Or do I save more time if I just feed everything to this compiler and then compile every time I change something? I have to compile another engine. That's kind of a problem. It could compile as like a shared object, that sort of thing. But for that we need some sort of binary stable API. So I'm not sure. One idea that I really like at some point was looking into like LLVMs, sort of intermediate language, and then, throw sort of bytecode to that and then do something with that, use any of the tools, but they don't have good tools. It's like LLVM. They had this great idea of being a low-level, virtual machine, but then it became just a compiler, which is good, but it could have been a lot better, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you on the issue with always compiling everything, but the Python approach also has the advantage that you have normal Python code that runs interpreted all the time, but when you need the speed, you can compile then, so that would be an approach for during development. I always just use the interpreted version, and for my release builds that need to be fast, or for specific builds that need to be fast, then I can compile.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, during development you want like really fast, like you edit something and you run it. You even edit and use the live editing, and maybe it works. And then when you package, you compile and you link, and then I don't know. Does it actually like call the normal compiler and the linker?
I have not looked that much into it, but I believe it really actually first does a rewrite into machine-generated C, like a .c file, a text file, and then you would use your normal toolkit to compile that.
Right. Yeah, that sounds interesting. It's like it becomes a question of, can you trust that the thing that is generated is going to behave exactly the same as your original code, which is not a complicated thing to achieve. But yeah, sometimes we have that problem. For example, for Doc Mendoza, a couple of times I had to, and also for the Ponya, that was a big game. I had to like debug my PCK file because something was behaving differently in the export as during development. But yeah, no, it's perfectly doable. Yeah.
That's kind of a dangerous situation to enter into when your tools have different code paths to like the final game, and having to invest extra time in testing and discovering that there might be some discrepancy there.
Yeah, definitely. I personally, the workflow of, you have your game and then you export to a PCK file that we have right now, that is something that I would do for a game that is like up to like 200 megabytes big, something like that. But then when you go over that, I would start doing your own export. And so, for example, the Ponya is like 1 gigabyte, something like that. And I actually export to 2 different PCK files and a bunch of files on the file system. And I do a bunch of things, like I load one of the PCKs on a thread, and I do a bunch of things with the stuff in the file system and stuff like that. And it's like, if you have a big enough game, you need to start looking into like what it actually means to have a release package, right? Like what is the engine doing? Because what the engine is doing really is just getting all your game and put it into like an archive file, and then putting the executable next to it. That's it. But you have other options. You can run from the file system. You can override stuff on the PCK with the file system, and vice versa, that sort of thing. And those are options that for big games you have to look into them.
Yeah.
Most games nowadays they're not that big, so the default behavior is good. But yeah, when it's big, you can't escape that part of the process.
And when you mentioned Deponia earlier, that's the iOS port, is that correct?
Correct. Yes, the PC port is all Visioner.
As far as optimization, there's a Trello board that keeps track of the roadmap for Godot Engine 2.1, which is the next release that's planned. And I know that in there's a whole section for optimization, including math, physics, and rendering, and size of the binaries. So none of that is in yet, but it's something that is planned, or at least planned to be investigated.
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to see for that is actual like benchmarks. Like if we could run a bunch of cases where, taking from like real world cases, but isolated into a benchmark, and then we can optimize for that. That's
right, setting up tests.
Yeah, like test cases and that you can use to actually see what's going on and also to test your optimization. The main reason why there's a lot of things that are not optimized is because we haven't run into the need to optimize. So usually what you do is first you write the code that works, and then you when you see that it's not performing, you go in and optimize it. And so sometimes it's like, okay, here I'm going to use an array instead of a hash table because it's easier to, I don't know, go through an array. But you know that a hash table would be a lot faster. But, first, if it means that your game is going to run and you're going to see it running and test it, then you use what works. And then eventually you optimize. Having in mind that it has to be optimized, that's important for the architecture of the engine. That is something that is part of the core sort of design of the engine. But yeah, we need to start seeing like real world cases and then work on making them, run faster basically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, talking about the improvements specifically on the 3D pipeline, can you tell us about something there? What is planned? How are you guys looking at Vulkan at all?
Yeah, the case of Vulkan, I think it's a case of economics, sort of, in the sense that, economics is like the science of managing your scarce resources, right? And so obviously the engine, the architecture is designed to be very portable, and we can have, ideally, if we had, all the resources in the world, we would have like 5 different renderers, right? One for DirectX, one for, I don't know, Vulkan, one for each console, and one for mobile. But, it's like we need to commit to something that will run on as many platforms as it can, and will have the best features that we can have with the least code that we need to maintain. Right now that's ES2. I think one goes back and forth like every week between one or the other. But we're thinking, ES3, maybe it'll be implemented or adopted faster by the industry. It's already adopted. Like you already see mobile devices that have ES3 faster than Vulkan, right? I think with the Steam announcement recently, if we see something from Apple, for example, where they plan, I don't know if they plan to have on their next iPhone or something, if they plan to have Vulkan, but that would be interesting. And also if we have hardware right now, like I don't know what video cards I have, if any of the video cards I have Vulkan, but I do know that they have ES3, right? So I guess I have an NVIDIA on a couple of the machines, so that would work. But yeah, it's like, is it worth it to start now on Vulkan, and I don't know, 6 months from now it's like gonna be on every machine ever or not?
Yeah, at least on the NVIDIA side of things, it's pretty much already in every machine that is still being used for some more graphically intense gaming. They are going back like all the way to the 600 series, GTX 600.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it's reaching far back. But I agree with what you said. It's a bit fragmented. Sadly, ES3 seems to be the last thing that's pretty much supported everywhere. After that, Apple has stopped caring about OpenGL. They are now with Metal, and there's DirectX 12 on Windows, and everybody else is doing Vulkan. So yeah, it's a bit fragmented. Seems like you need at least 3 backends to get anything done.
So Apple is not doing Vulkan, they're doing only the Metal thing?
So far, they have not committed to having Vulkan, and it seems like they're not interested at all.
Oh, that sucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds very strange because originally they went with OpenGL, which was a huge mistake. Like for the first, I remember in 2007 the iPhone came out, and we started talking to people from Sony. That's when what I was saying at the beginning, like we were seeing the PS3 and the iPhone, and the people from Sony were telling us all about like the architecture of the PS3. And I remember at one point somebody had an iPhone, and the guy from Sony said, if this thing has games, it's gonna kill the PSP. And when I started working on the iPhone, and I was also working on the PSP, I noticed that the hardware was pretty similar in terms of like the capabilities. But because the iPhone had OpenGL, it was basically killing like half the OpenGL driver was killing half of the performance of the graphics, because it had to do so much work on the driver on every frame. They had to like rearrange all your arrays with like vertices and stuff like that. And that was like, that was their trade-off. They had to kill all this performance to trade it for an API that is standard, or people, can bring code to it and they can support it on future phones. They can switch the GPU and still have this API. And so it sounds strange that now they're saying, no, we're going to go with something that nobody else supports, basically, I think.
Yeah, it's only on iOS and OS X.
It's only on the newer iOS devices, and I don't know, whatever Macs have good graphics cards, so not a lot of them.
Wow, yeah, that's horrible.
So how do you see Godot as a project progressing after the separation from Ocam? How do you see the whole project standing on its own legs, especially with the financing behind it, which at the moment is purely based on donations, I believe, or are you doing anything else?
We are working on stuff that is, for me, it's related to the engine. Basically, I'm doing some stuff with the Ponya right now, and we are, looking, I don't know exactly what we're going to do, like personally, for myself at least, but the funding through the foundation, that looks good, it looks okay right now. Going forward, I would say my objective is to like be able to form sort of relationships with other sort of members of the industry where that may find the engine useful. It's kind of a very abstract thing that to explain, but it's basically like, you have the developers. It's a chain of a lot of people, right? The developers, the engine, the publishers, the platform providers, the service providers, like all these ad networks and all this crap from the mobile industry. All of these entities, they would benefit from this engine existing because, people are making games with it, and they need games, they need content in that's what fuels the industry, right? New content, games. And so what I'm trying to do, and the foundation helps because it gives us this sort of standard business. It's a standard thing that businesses can relate to. I'm hoping to, form relationships with them and also communicate this idea that we can be useful to all of them. And so if we're useful, we need to find a way to continue to be useful to them, to continue this development. And obviously the best way to drive that point is to have good games, right? If I can show good games and say, look at these games, they can be on your platform, which is starving for games right now, when you're talking to whoever has a platform that has no games, like a console or something, then that's the best way to sell. That's gonna happen. I think it's gonna happen eventually. You have to give it time. And in the meantime, I try to go and meet with them whenever I can, and I think that's it.
Well, I gotta say also, on that note, that I'm very thankful for the advice and assistance you've given in the Godot IRC channel. Also, when we had the SteamLUG community project to create a game using the Godot Engine, and I think you've given me a couple bits of advice for the project that I was making as well. So thank you for sort of being out there and being willing to spend time with people who are using the tools.
Yeah, no problem. And also, I'm probably known as like the flakiest of the maintainers of the engine. Juan is the guy who is around for everyone a lot more than me. I'm hoping to have some more time to dedicate to that right now. For example, the Steam example, right? I had the app ID for like a year, and right now that sort of Dog Mendoza was sort of winding down and 2.0 was coming up, and so I said, okay, I have some time, I'm going to set this up. But before, I literally had no time at all for anything, and I'm hoping that that's going to improve. I think in the next few years, or well, in the next weeks or months too. Yeah.
Something else I'd meant to bring up was what role did Linux play within Occam Studio, and what role is Linux likely to play within the future of Godot's development?
So we pretty much, for most of the development, we use Linux. We use Linux as the sort of primary platform. There was sort of a dark period where Juan was. This was before mobile, right? And so he started DirectX 9, I think, renderer. And so for a few months, I think for like 6 months or something like that, the best maintained renderer was DirectX 9, so we had to use Windows. But for the most part, we work on Linux, and when we work with a team, with a bigger team, with Occam or any other of the companies that we work with, that's when the other platforms come in, right? Because everyone uses Windows, some people use Mac, and so that's when those come in. And obviously, when you ship, if it's a Windows game, it has to work there. But yeah, we use Linux because it's easier to compile, and the programmers, they need to compile. It's easier to do the stuff in command line, stuff like that. And it's just we are Linux users. So yeah, even for things like, for example, the Bonia for iOS, I did it all on Linux, and then when I needed to run on iOS, I would go to the Mac and get the build loaded into the iPad. But we just feel more comfortable working on Linux.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear.
From what I can tell, most of the community in the IRC channel is also using Linux.
Yeah, and we find that like people, for example, when we hire people for Occam, the programmers would just use Linux. Like random, just look for a random programmer, they would use Linux. Or when I was in the Dalek, I'd be like, can you get me a Linux computer to work on? Or last time I needed like a Linux and a Windows. And they were like, yeah, sure. It's part of their standard sort of procedure to have a Linux image to install on computers. It's like people in the industry use it. Maybe their boss will come in one day and say, we're going to use Windows for this, Windows server for this weird thing that we need to do or something. But the people who are working, a lot of them, the programmers obviously, they'll use Linux. It's pretty standard, I think.
Hero, Dorita, do you guys have anything else that you want to bring up?
No, I'll probably remember it 5 minutes after we're done, but not now.
That Godot is awesome.
That it is. Please donate to the Software Freedom Conservancy.
And Ariel, was there anything else that you'd like to say to our audiences, to Linux gamers, or to people interested in Godot?
Thank you for the support. Thank you for the feedback. If you have feedback, we're happy to hear it. And, if you're making games, thank you for making games. To me, that's like the most important thing that we need is to see games. And, hopefully we are not only providing a tool for people to make games, but also, through our experience with working with teams and big teams and small teams and stuff like that, we try to provide a tool that lets people sort of express themselves better. Like the artists can test their art directly on the game, that sort of thing, where it's like they're more comfortable, right, with this engine. And I hope if they can send us feedback about that, I think that, because hopefully we can make games and we can be happier making those games, I guess.
That's a nice thought to reflect on. I know that when I make stuff, it certainly makes me feel happy, and that's why I aim to make things.
Yeah.
So definitely appreciate having the tools available as well.
Yeah, no problem.
So on that note, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Yep. Thank you for having me. It's been a fun, interesting conversation.
Yes, thank you. That was really insightful.
I agree. I really appreciate that you took the time to join us.
So, looking at community stuff, on the past events front, we had Nuclear Dawn, Space Hulk, Dota 2, and Synergy. Any of you guys happen to make those events?
I was there for Synergy, which was mad fun, and we probably tried too hard to get the gnomes through episode 2 and still failed.
Ah,
I was there for Nuclear Dawn as well as Dota 2, and those are both games that we get a lot of people for, and it was nice.
Yeah, Nuclear Dawn was fun. That was the only event that I've managed to make in a long time. It was good to jump in on, and also to give people a chance to mess around with people who hadn't commanded before a chance to play around. It was good. So for upcoming events on the horizon, after the show we're going to be playing some Grid Audio Sport. We have Factorio coming up this weekend as well. We have Sir You Are Being Hunted, and No More Room in Hell. Autosport, sorry.
I did not want to correct you on that. It was just so nice.
Well, I'm looking forward to the music-based, the rhythm-based spin-off.
Yeah, maybe like a franchise deal with what's that game called? AudioSurf? Yeah, that would be nice.
So there's stuff that's happened within the community. Cheese, you made a guide for Firewatch.
Yeah, this is the second Firewatch guide I've made. I kind of had some other sad things happening around last month, and I kind of took some time off my other projects to just sit down and do a few small things. And one of those was writing some guides for Firewatch. The first one looks at all the books that you can find and collect in the game, but this new one is a lot bigger, and it tries to catalog all of the wildlife that exists in the Firewatch's universe, I guess, or that's presented within the game. That took like 20 hours worth of research to nail down all the butterfly locations and research all their scientific names and stuff. So for anybody who's excited by that at all, I don't know if it'll be useful to anyone else, but it was a lot of fun to dig in and get thorough with it.
This is really great, but an example of having way too much time for this stuff, but awesome still. Moving on to general Steam and Valve news. A big news has been the HTC Vive Consumer Edition has been announced, and the price is sky high, higher than the Oculus Rift, with $800 make that 900 with taxes roundabout there, or
shipping
900
and stuff.
Yeah, and 900 euros when it comes right down to it, what you actually have to cash out to get one. But it comes with a built-in microphone, Bluetooth for notification, for mobile devices, the 2 Lighthouse bases, the controllers, and a bundle of games like Job Simulator, Fantastic Contraption, Tilt Brush, and, well, I guess it's a much bigger package than the Oculus Rift and much more complete for the VR experience, I believe.
Yeah, this is really exciting.
I think it's worth kind of sort of, like $800, $900, let's say about $1,000. It's a lot of money, but for this kind of tech, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, and compared to the Oculus Rift is missing a lot of the functionality the Vive has. I would say they are about the same value per dollar, if you can make that calculation.
I'd probably say that like the room scale features are probably I would value those higher than the price difference. Maybe I don't know. Like you say, it's a tough thing to make a call on, but
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like crazy out there.
There's the room scale tracking, as well as the fact that the Oculus Rift doesn't have a controller that's made for VR. So,
Yet.
right, not yet. And when it is, that'll be something extra you have to buy.
By the way, we have a couple of those. I don't know if they're dev kits or the consumer model.
The Vive?
The HTC Vive, yeah.
Nice.
So is VR support something we're going to see in Godot in the future, do you think?
I assume, yeah. We got from Valve into like their developer thing, and they sent a couple. So yeah, we should see this year some sort of support. I'm not happy to see that it's so expensive because not a lot of people are gonna have it, but it's a great toy to play, and that's one of the main sort of reasons why we port to a specific platform. It's because it's fun. So yeah, we should see some support, I think, this year.
You can't see the smile on my face, so I'm telling you, there's a big smile on my face.
Yes, indeed. If I neglect the fact that I will not have money to buy any of that until next year, earliest, I'm still smiling like an idiot.
Oh, I've been saving for a while. I think I'll have one this year.
You lucky son of a handgun.
I think as well, like right now, it's pre-orders. The consumer device is getting ready to ship. This is really a thing for early adopters, and it's next year or the year after that any kind of hope of ubiquity, or like any hope of capturing like the actual market comes around, I think.
But I personally do not believe in a fast Generation 2 for these devices. If anything is going to happen, it's the existing, still up-to-date devices becoming more cheap through some kind of scaling magic or components becoming cheaper. But
And becoming more robust through firmware updates and so on and so forth, and more software that makes use of it. And, like it'll take time for the ecosystem to grow, I think.
Yeah, if you follow the Steam VR beta group on Steam, there's constant updates to the firmware, similar to what they've been doing with the Steam controller, it seems like.
In terms of frequency, yeah.
I use my Steam controller so rarely that I always feel like I'm a year behind whenever I turn it on and it needs firmware updates again.
Yeah, so to get an idea of the excitement around the Vive, there was 15,000 sold in the first 10 minutes, according to someone from HTC.
And the pre-order site was breaking in all kinds of ways from all the demand and all the traffic.
Yeah.
It's been kind of interesting to see, like there've been a bunch of kind of naysayer articles talking about how 15,000 units isn't enough to support the market. It's like, again, we're only looking at early adopters here.
And that's only in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's all kind of unknown ground that we're breaking here. It's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. But I gotta say, one thing that that I found kind of amusing was looking through stuff, like seeing some of the VR requirements. Never thought that I would see things like, you need a 2x1 meter playable space to play this game in a game description on Steam.
I think treadmills are really the mitigator here. They are not that expensive, at least not for people who are looking into getting an early VR headset, and they just make a lot more sense for a lot of applications.
Yeah, like you say, it depends upon the application. I think sitting down seated experiences are probably still going to be a big thing. I think that small area stuff like Job Simulator and what is it, like Slime's Fruit Emporium or something, that sort of stuff I think is probably going to be what we're going to see a lot of in the short term.
There's also budget cuts, that stealth spy game, sort of.
Yeah.
That approaches movement without you taking any steps. You, jump through portals.
Sort of, yeah. It's like you look at where you want to go and click and then you appear there or something.
But you throw, a portal down, and then you can look through it, and then you can step through it.
Oh, okay, alright. But, yeah, Linux support.
Right, so that's the thing, is Linux support is sort of a question mark right now. There was a developer from Valve who said, we're working on it, but it's not yet ready. Which is kind of expected, in my opinion. And that's, even when I have the money, I will not be buying it until Linux support is definitely there and solid. But it'll happen, I believe that.
Yeah, it's sad, but unexpected. But not unexpected, sorry. So the Steam runtime was updated recently to fix a ALSA incompatibility on newer distros. If I remember correctly, it was like newer versions of ALSA were conflicting with the Steam runtime stuff.
Right, so there was an API breakage in the ALSA libraries, and no longer is that a problem. So if before you had to delete that from your Steam runtime, it should work now. In addition, the Steam clients received an update for the Steam controller, which allows it to emulate Rumble on traditional gamepads. So, for example, if you're playing Grid Autosport and on an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller, it'll rumble to tell you that you're starting to lose grip. Now you should be able to enable that with the Steam controller. And it's not quite the same, since it's a different style, and this is haptic feedback with small motors, as opposed to swinging weights around on a servo like traditional controllers do. But you can try it out on any game that supports Rumble traditionally.
Valve has pushed out some new security and trading updates. From March 9th onwards, accounts without the mobile authenticator will have to have a trade hold on them for 15 days, except for longtime friends, which is only 1 day. In addition to that, the Steam market will now also be embracing the trade holds. And, well, they increased the size of the Steam support to more quickly generate generic emails that do not at all apply to the situation we're actually asking. Oh, no, they didn't write that? Okay, they're increasing the size of Steam support to more quickly address these issues. I hope they do more than just increase the size. Reading would be a start.
In this update, they also said no longer will they be restoring stolen items, so if you lose something due to bad security practices, then you aren't going to get it back. Before, they would just make a copy of it, which kind of hurt their market, especially if it was a very rare item that only had a few in existence and were very expensive. The reason why they're pushing this stuff further is because the mobile authenticator has proven to be much more effective than they expected at stopping items from being stolen. So, I think that's good news overall.
I'm still miffed that the mobile authenticator basically only exists on iPhone and Android, and I can't use it on my Ubuntu phone, and the 5 people using Windows Phone, I believe, also can't use this.
Right. It would be nice if they use one of the standard one-time password authenticators that already exist, but still, I think the fact that they're focusing so much on security is a positive improvement. So, Valve is implementing, or has implemented, a new policy for game bundles, where if you already own a game, they will reduce the price by a certain amount according to how many you own.
Right, and the first bundle that I'm aware of that does this is the Head Up Games Complete collection. Some people may have picked up some of the Bridge Constructor games, I think via Humble Bundles, and you can see there that it says that you kind of only end up paying for the games that you don't already have.
This sounds nice and much needed. It's like every time with a Steam sale where you would be getting the bundle just for convenience, but there's something in there you already own. And so you have to buy everything you want separately, like some game you don't have the DLC for. Well, that's a good idea, but long overdue.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very welcomed.
Well, it'll be nice for anybody that, especially if someone is new to Steam and say somebody gives them Left 4 Dead 2, then they want to go buy the Valve Complete Pack. They already own it, and they don't have to pay that extra cost because they're already gifted one.
Right.
So, moving on to tech news. LibRetro, the backend for RetroArch, has been updated to support Vulkan now. Now, we mentioned this last time, it was a pull request, and it was not yet complete, but now it's in LibRetro now in the master branch, and has support for X11, which it did not before. They also, in this update, were reviewing the improvements that it made. It's pretty impressive how much more consistent the frame rate is. That was the biggest difference that they noticed. Now, this isn't a very heavy workload, so the way that it takes advantage of Vulkan is very different. But the consistency was something that you could not achieve before with OpenGL. But it also had an improvement for their time change, the speed of the game, which they have built in. So now you can do that without messing with frame rates or whatever hacky method they used before. Also, in Vulkan news, Unreal Engine 4 released a demo named Protostar, which was running on a Samsung S7 Edge, I believe. So it's a mobile phone, and running Unreal Engine 4 in real time using Vulkan. So it was pretty impressive. The graphics were not something that you would generally expect from a mobile device. Did any of you guys see that?
Yes, I watched it. It's really nice, cutesy in its way, but also impressive.
So is this a demo they're making available for people to download, or is it just a video that they've released of it running on a mobile device?
This was just a showcase. The actual Vulkan support has not yet landed in Unreal Engine 4.
Right, okay.
But it's still cool to see what is to come.
So it looks like the NVIDIA Vulkan beta driver has been updated a bunch. Have you guys been following that?
Yeah, I've read it, but I still have not installed any of the Vulkan drivers on my system because I would still have to go past my package manager, and I really hate that because I'm currently sitting on Ubuntu 16.04 before it's released, which means kernel updates all the time.
See, the problem for me is that the version is still based on 3.5.5, which means that it's not compatible with the X11 server that I'm running, and I don't really feel like downgrading that. But they did have 2 updates. There were some bug fixes and performance improvements, as well as updating to the latest Vulkan API version, which is 1.0.4. Linux users were reporting that the performance in the Talos principle is now better in Vulkan using the NVIDIA driver than it is with OpenGL. So, despite the game not being very optimized, it's already surpassing the old method.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
Here's a redundant bit of news. Godot 2.0 stable has been released. You might have heard about that before.
No
It's
way.
also available on Steam, and it has an initial implementation for refreshed new plugin support.
Yeah, I actually forgot to mention plugin support when we were chatting with Ariel.
Yeah, it wasn't completely redundant.
So, as far as the plugin support, that's something that has been added after the 2.0 release. So,
Right, I think that's going to be 2.1, right?
right. So if you want to check that out, you can build from Git, or if the nightlies are ever implemented in the Steam branch, that would be cool. But until then, build from Git, you'll see all the latest features, and that's basically the biggest one. It came right after 2.0 was released.
Yeah, there's also a asset sharing system on the horizon as well, if I remember right.
Yes.
And that's kind of a really interesting thing, because that's certainly helped engines like, or platforms like Unity grow and gain a lot of momentum. Is the ability for people to share assets and components and stuff between each other. And I mean, I don't know whether there are monetization options for this sort of stuff for Godot, but it's certainly there's a whole marketplace that's evolved alongside Unity.
As far as I'm aware, plugin support is not completely new. There was plugin support before, but I guess it wasn't that great. But I clearly remember downloading and using plugins before.
This is a new API with an interface for loading and unloading them, and I believe it's all based on GDScript.
So on the asset sharing topic, the ability to monetize and stuff like that, it's going to be there through like a third-party server, something like that. But the actual
Neat.
Yeah, so it's not tied to a central server. You can implement your own stuff. And we're still thinking about those details. But the point is that for actual like selling and buying assets, it's very complicated, like legal matter, right? You need to have good contracts, you need to have good accounting practices, you need to withhold taxes from people, stuff like that. Like for example, when you're on Steam and you set up to publish your game, they ask you a bunch of questions like for the IRS and all this stuff, like what is your tax position and all this stuff. We need to figure that out, and that we have no idea how to do that. And it's very very sort of important stuff, because we can get sued, and it's all like copyright law, which nowadays it's like very important. And so that is, I think, the biggest challenge for that.
Yeah, no, it would be.
And something that we really should have mentioned earlier, if you're interested in developing any plugins for the engine, since it's very much a new feature and they're still looking for feedback, you should say anything that you run into, any problems. If there's more functionality that you need, mention that to the developers, and hopefully your improvements can be included.
Yeah, we need like real world test cases to know how to implement well, and now is the time, basically.
Moving on to general gaming news, looks like the Humble Indie Bundle 16 has launched. Is that still running?
Yes.
Yeah, which has Linux compatibility for all titles and DRM-free versions of them as well.
Yes, an actual full-scale bundle. The thing that made us love them in the first place. And they have done quite too few of, but this one has some really nice entries.
Yeah, it follows in the tradition of all the other indie bundles, well, for the most part. Anyway, in the Pay What You Want tier, there is Retro City Rampage DX, Outlast, and Never Alone with the Foxtails DLC. If you beat the average, there is Trine 3, Door Kickers, Duet, and Forced. Duet was a new port added in this bundle. If you beat the average plus $2, then you also get elseheart.break and Sunless Sea, which is also a new port to Linux.
So Duet and Sunless Sea have both previously been available to Linux users, but in a pre-release or beta capacity.
Right, Sunless Sea.
It's nice to see those actually officially moving out into being proper releases.
I know that Sunless Sea was, if you emailed them, they would give you access to the beta branch. Not sure exactly how Duet was, but
Duet's had a public beta branch for a while. The developer posted in the SteamLUG forums asking for testers a while back, and I jumped on.
I know that Nemoder has been having a lot of fun with Sunless Sea.
Yeah, it looks neat. I'm looking forward to checking it out at some point.
A new Insurgency game has been announced, called Insurgency Sandstorm. It switches from Source Engine to Unreal Engine 4, has graphical updates, a story mode, and some esports functionality, and they have already confirmed Linux support. which is nice, seeing how they continue their Linux support, and it's probably not been that much of a hard thing to pull off, with Unreal Engine 4 being quite nice for Linux already.
I'm not really familiar with the franchise. It's previously had Linux support?
Yes, Insurgency, the standalone game that was commercially sold, has Linux support. It's a Source Engine game, but the mod that predated that did not, which was also on Source Engine.
Yeah, okay. So it looks like Factorio has launched on Steam now, and existing purchasers have access to Steam keys.
Yes.
Nemoda is very happy about this.
So if you purchased Factorio before and you got it through their website, you can go to the page they set up for reclaiming a Steam key, and then it just works. Oh, right. It's been released into early access. This is not...
Oh, okay.
The game is still in development. It is also the top-rated game on Steam, so it has very many positive reviews.
Hitman Go has been released on Steam. If you remember, that has been this previously mobile-only board game-like strategy game in the Hitman franchise. And it's now out on Linux. It's running on Unity, and I believe Fury brought this up. This is actually one of my predictions kind of coming true from last year for this year, where some games just happen to come out on Linux from people we didn't expect because the engines allow for it, and the engines make it easy. And I believe Hitman Go really is an example for that.
Yeah, because
I certainly didn't see it coming.
This is the, Square Enix. When have they ever cared about Linux at all? And now they have a Linux game on Steam. It seems like it's just the developer said, well, we could put it on Linux because Unity supports it, and then they did.
And it's also a very highly regarded game, at least on mobile. And from the form factor it offers, from the way you interact with it, it shouldn't be too bad on PC either.
Well, this wasn't just a straight port. They updated it to be a little more fitting for PC as well.
Yeah, I think I got that impression when it launched as well, yeah.
This is specifically the definitive edition, something like that.
Superhot has been released. Either of you guys had a chance to play that?
Not yet. I'm holding out a bit because my backlog is a behemoth I just cannot tame. And it seems to be a bit shaky on Linux so far, so I will wait for some patches and for me to actually finish XCOM 2 at least once before moving on to another game.
Yeah, I don't have this game, but I know a lot of people are really excited for this, as it's quite unique. For anyone who's not familiar, time only passes when you move, so you can stand still and everything stops. And so basically it's bullet time mechanics all the time.
Yeah. And you can rewind time if you mess up, so you kind of, the idea is to sort of, I guess, strategically navigate the space. I've played it a little bit, it seems okay for me. Although the menuing is a bit odd, and I couldn't find a way to just pause the game and go and interact with other things. It would quit the level and go back to the main menu. I think there's also a replay feature that's not available yet on Linux, but I hear that the feature itself isn't properly finished anyway, so it's not too big a deal. A nice thing, at least for me, is that this game has its roots in 70 FPS. I think it came out of the 2013 event.
Yeah, sounds about right.
But at that time, I don't believe it had Linux support. Really cool to see, interesting ideas that come out of game jams like this growing into something bigger.
There's been a new entry to the Deponia series. The new game Deponia Doomsday was announced and then released with Linux support.
Yeah, Hal had that because I didn't know that there was a new one in development, so it came as quite a surprise to know that there was another one.
Me too. I thought they were done with the franchise.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, this was very much a secret.
That Dragon Cancer is now available on Linux. Have either of you guys played this?
I have not.
No, I have not, but I just added it to my wish list. Whenever I feel the need to really have gut-wrenching sadness induced into me by a game, this is the one to pick. And I mean this in a positive way, if you can believe this, because at least from outside opinions, I believe this is a game that really brings its message to you, right to your heart, stabs you in it, and says, deal with it. This is based on a real story.
So, this game was crowdfunded, was it last year or the year before? And a Linux version was part of what they had promised. There was a little bit of awkwardness with getting the Linux build out. There was some misinterpretation of console exclusivity agreements and what that meant for SteamOS. I gotta say though, I haven't played it precisely for the reasons you mentioned, Dorito. I'm not really in a good state to absorb something like that at the moment, but it does seem very much like a touching work. For anybody who hasn't heard of it, the developer's son died of cancer at the age of 4, I think. And this game is, I guess, a tribute to their son and a way of remembering the impact that he had on their life. So it's very, I guess, bittersweet would probably be the air that it has.
Yeah, but at least good on the publisher for the console version to clear up that SteamOS situation quickly. They said in their interpretations SteamOS is a PC and should be treated as such and doesn't fall under the agreement they had. But I believe they could have just as easily been a bit more aggressive and said, no, this falls under our agreement. So,
Yeah.
well, it's fair play all the way.
Certainly, they were planning to publish DRM-free versions outside of Steam for Linux, regardless of the outcome of that. So they were going to give, Linux support was going to exist in some form either way. They also had a couple of issues with the Linux build, and I was able to help them identify and work through a couple of those before release. But a shout out to TAC again, Levi Bard, who's previously joined us as a guest on the show, for helping resolve some of the issues that we found, or offering advice on how to resolve some of the issues that we found. Shadwin.
A new stealth game by Frozen Byte. This was also a big surprise. You can play the demo right now. It's on Steam and maybe other platforms, but it has Linux support.
Yeah.
For a time, they were doing something that was fairly unique. If you played the demo, the launch price was reduced for everybody. So I didn't see exactly by how much it was reduced. And every person that played it was only a very small amount. But it's a cool idea to try to get more publicity and get people excited about it.
So when I first looked, I think the launch price was like $25 or $30, and if we look at the site now, that's down to $14.55 plus a tiny fraction.
Okay.
So the idea is that the more that people play the game, I think there's I haven't actually played the demo much myself, so I can't say what it is, but I think there's some kind of score aspect, and the higher the combined community score, the lower the price will end up.
Is that how it was?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay. Well, the gameplay I thought was fairly interesting. It's a lot different from any other stealth game, really. In some ways, it's reminiscent of Superhot because the movement, and every time you move is when time would pass. You could stop and everything would freeze. And
does it freeze entirely? Because in Superhot, it still continues at a very slow pace.
Yeah, in Shadowin, it stops entirely. So you can jump in midair and then stop, just let go of the controls. And you'll be floating there and you can look around and see all the other guards and everything.
Like in the Matrix.
Right. So
you can rewind time arbitrarily in Shadowin, can't you?
Yeah, and it seems like you can rewind all the way to the very beginning of the mission.
Neat.
Other things, the movement, you have a grapple. It's kind of similar to how Zoya's grapple works in Trine 3. Right, so it has the rope physics that they added in Trine 3. You can grab a box and wrap the rope around a pole and things like that. But you can attach to a lot more points. You can also, this is in a third-person perspective, like the camera is behind your character. It's a little bit different because of that, but feels very similar because of the rope physics, the way you can jump and then attach to something and jump again, and so on.
Yeah, and if it's not clear, the game uses the same engine as Trine 3.
Yeah, it's also, you have a collection of gadgets that you can use to either distract or kill guards, and mostly you just have to get to the end of the level, but the challenge is that you can't just run through it. You have a child to escort, so you either need to kill or distract them so that the child can sneak past until you get to a door where you will need her to pull the lever for you, since the door has two levers and you can't pull them both at the same time.
So how long is the demo for people who'd like to check that out?
It's just one level that has 3 sections, and depending on how you play it, it could take a vastly different amount of time. Every time that I played it without killing anyone, which took me a little bit longer. If you're just going around stabbing people in the back or throwing bombs at people, it'll probably be a little quicker.
Yeah, it seems like avoiding killing people is more of a challenge.
and a lot more fun, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The first area is also very open, so it allows you to experiment with how the movement works and the rope mechanics and so on, the rewinding of time.
For anybody who's interested, Assault Android Cactus is the March indie box. It's a service where you can... It's subscription oriented, but you can subscribe to one and cancel, or you can just get yourself a gift thing and get one. But the idea is that they do boxed versions of indie games with a bunch of goodies inside them. At the time of recording, there are 14 days left to pick that up as part of the pre-order thing, and then afterwards it's down to whatever stock they've got available. Previous indie boxes have included things like maps and soundtracks and other bits and pieces. I think the Brutal Legend one is the only one that I've gotten previously. Have you ever grabbed anything from them, Hero or Dorita?
I have not.
No, this is a bit too much of an expensive proposition for me at the moment. To get a game I may or may not like, and single boxes, I don't know, I just buy the game online. But I love the concept, like games in boxes, that feels like so 1895.
1895.
Hasn't it been this long already?
I think so.
But yeah, I like for a game that you're interested in, if it's a game that you're really excited about, then I can imagine that this would be a cool collector's thing.
Yeah, and Assault Android Cactus is a really cool game, and the indie box will definitely come with a Linux version, so...
Yes. And also, while we're talking about Cactus, I don't know if it's not exactly big news, but developers have been putting together some small interviews that cover the game's development and inception. So for anybody who is into the game, they're worth checking out. There are some nice footage of like really old prototypes that kind of show the way that the game has evolved. So there's been a new XCOM update, new XCOM. I've been running a beta branch which has that in it for a while, so I'm not sure.
It definitely fixed the smoke particle issues where everything was just pink smoke. That is gone.
Yeah, I didn't get to see many of the other issues because I didn't play much without using that. But it's great to see that out for everyone.
So as I mentioned in the games that I was playing over the last couple weeks, Speedrunners now has an opt-in Linux beta. This is thanks to Flibit. And I was playing it, it had a few crashes, but besides that, was working really well.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. So was that a like an official port, or is that something
This is
Flibit did?
an official port.
Yeah, okay.
But they were saying they wanted to have a Linux version for quite a while, and now there's the beta. So it's cool. I'd never even seen gameplay of it before, so now playing it, it's pretty interesting. It's sort of like a platforming racing game, like a 2D platformer racing game.
Mm.
So apparently all 3 Overlord games are making its way to Linux, or at least show signs of it.
Interesting. I don't know much about this franchise, but there was something about it. Is it related to Dungeon Keeper at all?
It's a bit in the similar vein. You play a bad guy, the Overlord. He controls his minions and attack stuff. I don't know. This was a bit of a sleeper hit a few years back, or some more years back now. But apparently the third one was really crap. So the first 2 are good, and the third one is not. Keep that in mind.
It's sort of a blend, I think, between a third-person action game and commanding your minions around in real time. Also, at least Overlord 1 and 2 were listed on the virtual programming site, so I assume that all 3 of them are being ported with Eon by VP.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Flipfire continuing their prototype showdown. They're on to round 3 now. The 2 prototypes that they have up and running, or in the running at the moment, are Rufus Mows the Lawn and A Traveller. Have you guys had a chance to poke around with them at all?
Nope.
I have not paid attention to this prototype showdown at all.
I gotta say, I haven't had time to check any of them out either. It's an interesting notion, but I really do wonder how well they're going to be able to hold down people's attention for the amount of time it's going to take to run through all the prototypes and all the voting.
But if you're interested in determining the direction of Flipfly's next game, then go check those out and vote on their website.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Tim Sweeney, who is... What's his position at Epic exactly?
Top dog.
Yeah, top dog, like head honcho super boss at Epic, who make Unreal Engine. He wrote a piece for The Guardian where he basically slams Microsoft and Windows for their universal Windows platform, especially in regards to games, as they lock down the ecosystem. They make it impossible, except for some obscure sideloading, to actually get new applications using that basis onto your device, being it Windows Phone or tablet or the actual desktop.
Pretty much what they were already doing with their certification stuff and what Apple have been doing for a while.
Yeah, but the difference here is that in this case, they're adding features that are very useful to game developers and making it only available through this platform. It's not available for the regular Windows API. And if you want to use them, you're basically an exclusive. You have to distribute through their store, and if you don't want to, it's kind of unclear if you're even allowed to, but for testing purposes at least, you have to turn on the setting that allows you to sideload, so you can't just pass around copies of your game, because most people wouldn't be expected to switch that option on.
Yeah, he apparently elaborated on that some more in a podcast hosted by Polygon. I have not had time to check that out. But I think the big takeaway is here that the all-knowing almighty Gaben has predicted the exact right thing back in the day when he was pushing personally for Steam to come to Linux and the whole SteamOS platform. It's like, if it talks like a duck, walks like a duck, it is a duck, and I don't like this duck, let's go to Linux. They're penguins, they're much better.
I do really feel like this is in line with stuff that Microsoft was kind of already doing, or already moving in the direction of. Like, it's not surprising to me at all.
Yeah, but somehow the entire world couldn't see that one coming, and now everybody is surprised that this is happening.
And Tim Sweeney was even saying they'd been talking to Microsoft about these features for 18 months and telling them you probably shouldn't make it so locked down. And Microsoft was like, yeah, of course. And then they release it publicly and it's all locked down. So he's of the opinion that if they don't make any changes to make it more open, that it should all die, basically. And it's sort of surprising coming from him, as Epic and Microsoft have been sort of friendly in the past.
To me, the biggest question about this is, first of all, how come Apple is allowed to get away with this? And they've been getting away with this for years and nobody complained. And the other sort of point is, if this thing is going to become the new Windows API and they're going to abandon the old API, then the Windows as a normal computer, a computer that you would use for research and for work and for...
It becomes a lot less useful.
It becomes useless, right? Because now you have to ask Microsoft for permission to run software on your own computer. So, if they abandon the old APIs, yeah, it's like it becomes useless. It's not clear, or I haven't heard what the plan. It sounds like this is the new Windows, the new thing for Windows, and this is going to be their main API forever, which would be sad, yeah.
To answer the Apple question a bit, I believe Apple has not been getting away with that with a lot of people. I mean, all the hype around the iPhone is with mostly people who are not that tech savvy, who have no understanding of that. For them, App Store is a good thing, and it's not that extreme on the desktop because, let's face it, OS X is nearly as unpopular on the desktop as Linux is, and they do not hold a quasi-monopoly over how the desktop computer looks like.
They also don't have a lot of game developers supporting them.
Yeah, and somehow games get people much more riled up than,
yeah, exactly.
Let's say, their actual productivity tools. They sometimes need to earn money.
Well, Tim Sweeney is obviously very specifically concerned about the game industry.
Well, we should probably note that Epic has supported macOS for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is the state of Gatekeeper on OS X? How does it communicate to you? I believe it's on by default, so if you download unsigned apps,
you can't run them. You gotta turn it off.
Yeah, but does it tell you? I believe Windows tells you, this file is broken with their Gatekeeper stuff, if you try to run unsigned.
Oh, it just says that you've downloaded it from somewhere dodgy and that it's a dodgy thing and that you shouldn't run it.
Yeah, something like that, where the wording is like, no, this could potentially be bad, but the wording is, this is probably bad, toss it away.
Yeah, that's kind of how it's framed.
I understand the feature of warning people about unsigned things, but having the closed API is really not so nice.
Yeah, but it's all building on each other. It's the first step to the App Store acceptance and pushing people that way, and then push your closed ecosystem through.
Yeah, in the case of the iPhone, it could be a case of inertia. Like the iPhone from day one, it was a closed platform. and Windows wasn't.
Right.
And so if you do the gradual thing, because I'm sure that the Microsoft shareholders, they looked at the iPhone and said, why can't we have this on our thing? Why do we let people just use their computers to do whatever they like? We should have a share of what they do. And so we have this inertia of the Windows being the operating system that you run on a normal computer. So, this could be the reason why nobody's calling on Apple about the iPhone for this.
This also reminds me of what Cory Doctorow has talked about years ago, about the coming war on general purpose computing. I believe this is how it manifests, on top of the whole FBI encryption deal, where they say, we actually don't want people to be able to encrypt with their general purpose computing devices. So yeah, we do have smart people around. They always predict bad things, and they are usually right about it. So why are we never doing anything about it in time?
Well, I guess most of us already are. I mean, we're using free software operating systems and other
And
tools,
game engines.
presumably. And game engines. So moving on to crowdfunding news, a game that I think we mentioned last time, Overload, is going to have a playable teaser or demo or development build, I guess. They're hoping that this will get the crowdfunding campaign a little bit extra visibility and a little bit extra enthusiasm. It's going to be available to backers first and then to the public next week. So that's exciting, and I'm certainly looking forward to that. It'd be interesting to see what impact this teaser has on the crowdfunding campaign. I kind of hope that it has the same sort of impact that the Dog Mendoza demo had for theirs.
Yeah, they're not doing quite so well on the Kickstarter right now.
I mean, it's still possible, but yeah, it's a long way to go.
Definitely.
And as Namoto has pointed out in chat, they've committed to continuing to work on the project. They've stated that the crowdfunding goal is for I guess things that aren't on the critical path, things that would
Like Linux
make
support?
for a bigger and better game. No, I think they're going to do Linux support regardless.
I don't know. I hope that they will, but
I got the impression that they would. I can double check. I mean, they're using an engine that supports Linux. I don't know whether this teaser is going to have Linux support, but either way, I'm going to try and get it running. But yeah, they've committed to continuing to work on the game, even if they don't make their goal.
So I guess with this, we conclude this cast. If you have feedback for us, we have an email address, cast@steamlug.org. We are on IRC on Freenode with #SteamLUG. We are on Twitter @SteamLUG, on Google+, +SteamLUG, and on YouTube, the channel called SteamLUG.
SteamLUG.
Thanks everybody for joining us, especially you, Ariel, and see you around next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Jeez, you might have murdered the XCOM 2 update link with what you just did.
Oh.
Control Z, Control Z.